Ever tried to figure out why you're arguing with your partner about the most simplest of things? Or tried to help out a friend to stick to their gym schedule and read a book? Or maybe you've tried to have your kid eat veggies without a complete meltdown? Well, let me tell you, you're gonna get so much better at handling these situations if you know a little bit about how to do sales. Sales isn't just about closing deals, it's about navigating life and relationships and the messiness in between, so everybody should know the basics of it. And at the end of the video, I'm also gonna give you a simple framework that you can use in actual sales conversations. So, how do you actually do it? Let's dig in. Before we begin, we gotta reframe. Sales isn't about manipulating people or convincing them or persuading them to do something. Sales is really about deeply understanding one's problems, building relationships, problem solving, helping people make right decisions, and I think most importantly, navigating the steps to reach common goals. So let's start from the top. How do you deeply understand someone's problems? Let's say you have a friend and they come to you with, I don't have time to read books. If someone comes to you with a problem, any problem, you must be highly aware that there's a chance that you're dealing with something that's super surface level. So your job now is to dig deep into the root cause of that. Otherwise, you won't be able to help or create any meaningful impact. Okay, so how do you do that? Number one, you gotta start understanding their situation by asking broad questions. These could be simple things like, what does your day look like? What do you do on the weekends? What do you do after work? When do you typically read books and how do you feel when you read them? And if you're really stuck and can't come up with any questions, just ask as many why questions as possible. Why don't you have time to read books? Why do you want to read books? Why haven't we talked about this before? Why did you bring it up today? Why does it matter even? Why do you want to read books? And once you've built some level of context and you generally understand the situation that you're in, you really need to start drilling down into specific questions. And sometimes these questions are totally okay if they're a little bit even challenging. Things like, do you actually feel like you don't have time to read, or is there something else that's stopping you? Or is there something during your day that you would rather give up in order to have the time to read books? Why is this important? Well, two things. Context is required to really understand the root of the problem. Maybe they actually have so many hobbies that if reading is really, really important for them, they have to cut something else out. Or maybe you find out that they're constantly in a really crowded environment, so it's very difficult for them to actually just sit down and focus on reading. And two, to see if this is a real problem in the first place. What if the person is worried about reading books, but at the same time they don't have a job, they have 2 kids to feed, and they're in debt? Then the answer is like, forget the books. 1, we need to find you a job. 2, we need to get you into like a more stable position in life in general. And then 3, we can start worrying about reading books and educating yourself and maybe increasing your income. And that brings us to building relationships. You need to get on the same page with the person that you're talking to and make them feel heard. I know this now feels like a therapy session. I call it mirroring, reflecting. It's actually very simple. You have to just repeat back whatever it is that they said in a way how you understood it. And ideally, you try to articulate it way better than they ever have articulated the issue for themselves. For example, okay, what I'm hearing is that you would like to start reading more books so that you can expand your knowledge about how to grow businesses, but every time when you get home in the evening, you're just way too exhausted to open up anything that's non-fiction. So a few things will happen now. 1, you might actually be the first person ever to articulate this so clearly for them, so they'll just love you forever for that. And 2, even more critical, if there's any gaps in your understanding, they're gonna point it out to you straight away so that you can both get on the same page again straight away. Now, how do we build trust? This will either help you level up your existing relationships or build the first layers of trust with complete strangers. The main thing, of course, here is honesty. But what is it? It's about building a safe space of sort where everything can be put on the table transparently. The thing that has worked really, really well for me is to listen to that gut feeling of something really isn't right. Whether it's just something that's not clear enough for you, or maybe you see a direct problem in here, it actually also doesn't really matter whether it's right or wrong. It's extremely critical that you point it out. Often we hold those things inside because we don't want to be wrong, we don't want to embarrass ourselves, or we want to just stay away from the conflict. Over the years, I've learned how to notice this uncomfortable feeling that I get, and that is how I know now it's time to bring it up. Honesty is all about saying exactly how you feel, no matter what, which leads us to vulnerability. Owning up to your own weaknesses can be really, really powerful. Alongside trust, it builds emotional closeness and safety at the same time. It really turns me versus you into us versus the problem, signaling that I'm not here to win, I'm here to connect, and I trust you with the truth, which in most cases, people are gonna return that trust. For example, I've had my fair share of sales calls that I've messed up, and the best reaction that you can have in that case is telling the person directly, like, hey, I think I completely messed up the call today. Like, how do you feel the conversation went? Do you mind if we do another call so that we can actually like figure this out? And as weird as it sounds, whenever these kind of situations have come up, where I have to stop the call, whether it's at the end or midway, and be like, hey, let's go completely back to the beginning because I don't have a clue what we're talking about right now. 100% of the times it had a positive outcome. People are generally nice people and really encouraging you and being like, hey, no, totally okay, let's do that next call. And they're more than willing to help you give all of the information you need now to make sure that you understand everything you need to actually better help them. Fun fact, the biggest contract probably that I've ever signed, first call, we had launched a new product. I was on a call with a guy that had been in the space and super experienced for like decades, and I completely messed it up. I had no clue what he was talking about, but it ended up being success because of that transparency. And in relationships, if you never show sign of vulnerability, you'll never be able to build meaningful, deep connections. None of us are perfect, and all of us are actually just trying to figure things out. Okay, now that you have all the context that you need and you have the trust, now we can get into actually solving the problem and making good decisions. This is now the time when you can start suggesting solutions, but it may not actually be as straightforward as you think. Here's what I mean. Things get very, very tricky if you need to convince the person that they're wrong about something. You actually just can't tell them straight up usually. You have to ask a line of questions to direct them towards that answer so that they can come up with that answer themselves. So instead of just saying like, hey, just wake up 30 minutes earlier and read a book in the morning, you have to go through a logical sequence of questions. For example, don't get me started. Like sometimes when I'm done with work, like I can't think straight. So I can't imagine even like opening up a book about like businesses. But like, what do you think, like when would be a good time of day to like read? And they might go with, I love reading books in the mornings, and actually like this is one of my favorite weekend activities. An interesting follow-up could be, well, why haven't you done it then so far? Oh, I get up at 8 so that I can make it to work by 9, and like I need my 8 hours of sleep or I'm gonna be very unproductive. Oh, so you go to sleep at midnight? And maybe, just maybe, this will spark something in their brain that'll go, yeah, that being said, actually, I could go to bed like at least like 30 to 45 minutes earlier so that I could like wake up half an hour earlier as well and take time to read books a bit. Good job! Voila! You did it! They got there themselves. Of course, this isn't going to happen 100% of the time. So in those cases, it's also okay to just like suggest them directly the solution. But you gotta make sure that you've gone through this reasoning and questioning first, and you have to ask the question in a non-combative way, because phrasing the question correctly is gonna help them to agree with your solution. Something that I've really loved using is the word insane in this context. For example, would it be completely insane if you went to bed 30 minutes earlier and woke up 30 minutes earlier so that you had the time to read the book? And it's like, nobody would ever say no to that. Yes, it makes complete sense. I actually don't do anything in the evenings. I just kind of exist, so yes. Yes. And all of this is cool and all, but then how do you actually solve the problem? Something to keep in mind here too is that with some more complex problems, there might be other people involved. So in those cases, you also need to know who else is responsible for making this decision and what are the things they care about or are worried about, and how do they make decisions. If that's not the case, once you've agreed to the solution, most of the hard work is actually done. So this is now the place with the highest risk for you to mess things up. Because if you don't commit to a solution, nothing's ever gonna happen. How do you do that? Is you need to lock in very specific next steps on how you're gonna solve the problem. So starting tomorrow, you're gonna read books every single morning. Every single morning, you're gonna text me a few sentences of the things that you learned. And in 2 weeks, we're gonna just catch up and see how things went. And yeah, that's it. To summarize, there's really no need to know any like sales tricks. And to be honest, you also don't need to know any of the questions that I talked about in this video as well. What I personally follow is just a few core principles. Be genuinely interested in people that you talk to. Deeply try to understand the problems that you're dealing with. At times this will be painful and they might even get annoyed at you for all of the questions that you're digging into. Be honest and listen to that gut feeling that we talked about. Empathize with people and try to put yourself in their shoes. Especially if you're in sales, give them the best advice that's best for them, not that's gonna earn you the most amount of money. My best sales strategy actually probably has been that I prefer to undersell my customers rather than to oversell. Because if you undersell, they can always grow their account if things go well. If you oversell, now they hate you forever. Here we go. As I promised, here's the end of the video, and I'm gonna give you that framework. The framework is called SPICED. S-P-I-C-E-D. S meaning situation. Can you tell me a bit more about what's going on? Broad questions. How are things working today? P, problem. What problem are we trying to solve here? What's the most critical issue that you're dealing with today? I, impact. What happens if you don't fix that issue? What goals are you trying to reach? And what will change once we fix this issue? CE, critical event. Why focus on this issue now? And what's the deadline to getting this issue fixed? And finally, D, decision. How are you gonna make this decision? Who else needs to be involved? And what does your buying process even look like? If you cover all these topics, and for every answer that you get, ask a couple of these why follow-up questions that we talked about as well, you should really have a clear understanding of what they're dealing with and how you fit into that picture, and see, if you should be even working together in the first place. And if the answer is yes, figuring out those exact steps on how to reach those common goals. And of course, like and subscribe.